Hello, travelers. My name is Grace Simmons, and this is the Random and Wonderful podcast. Settle in and listen to stories of wanderlust and transformation as you gain tips to inspire your next travel experience. The Random and Wonderful is brought to you by the Amethyst Palava Hut, LLC. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Random and Wonderful. I'm your host, Grace Simmons, and today my guest is Rafael Peña. I'm very excited because I was introduced to Rafael, and so we're going to hear a little bit about his journey in travel, journalism, but also the experiences that he's had while living in other countries. Rafael, could you please greet everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everyone. My name's Rafael Peña, she said, and I'm a journalist and travel strategist. A lot of my work you might have seen in Travel Noire, Black Enterprise, and now DetourXP, which is a McClatchy brand. So a lot of my articles are syndicated in the Miami Herald, SACB, The Observer. So we're covering a lot of ground when it comes to travel stories from the Black and brown perspective.
Nice. How do you get into travel writing and journalism?
All right. So my journey doesn't start off like people that wanted to study journalism or go into writing for a living. Mine was a little bit different, where this new era of like social media kind of introduced me into journalism. I was living in New York City, and I was an event coordinator for the United Federation of Teachers, which is New York City's teachers union. And I was also doing a lot of like nightlife events and promoting parties, I guess you could call it, like 5 days a week. Within all of that, I ended up meeting my future wife on an app who was also working, let's say, like 100 hours or 200 hours a week, it felt like, working for Viacom. So we both kind of connected on like, there's a quality of life issue that we're having living in New York and working so many hours just to keep up with, bills, eating, just a normal lifestyle. We saw ourselves working really hard to the point where we only really got to date each other like after work, when we were able to see each other every once in a while. On our second official date, she says to me, hey, if we're going to get close, I have to let you know, but I'm moving out of the country. This is something that I really wanted to do. And I know that I've been dating people here and there, but nobody really wants to come along. And me, because I was already into her, I just jumped out and I said, hey, I'll go with you. Not really knowing what it was and all the research she had put in. And she was like, all right, well, if you're serious, this is what we have to do. And then what we did was we had meetings like every other Saturday. We would meet somewhere and we would talk about the places we wanted to go. And it was between like South America and Southeast Asia. And then all of that got narrowed down to Thailand. Then about a year and a half later, it's 2019. We both turn in our letters of resignation to our employers. And, everyone that we knew at our jobs, they thought that we were nuts, or they either thought that it was real romantic that we were like giving up our jobs and going, to Thailand and like eat, pray, love for the rest of our lives or whatever. So, from me doing a lot of the events on, the corporate side and the nightlife side, I had a really big following, and I never really knew everyone that was following me. When I got to Thailand, I was documenting my story on Instagram, and I was just telling people, what it was like to move to Thailand, how I got there, my first experiences. And one of my followers happened to be, I guess, an editor at the time. Yeah, she was just an editor at the time at Travel Noire and asked me to write one story. How I moved there, when we moved there and all that. And I wrote that one story. And then I just maintained that relationship for a couple of years till the pandemic hit, and I was living in Argentina. And I was like, I reached out to my network again. I was on Facebook, I think it was. And I was just like, hey, I need something creative to do. Like, I don't have a job out here and we're on lockdown. So if anyone knows anything, let me know. So what came about, she reached out. Now she was like in a higher position, and she says, hey, we actually need some writers. Do you think you can do this? And at the time, I was like, I think I can probably contribute, maybe like once a week or something like that. So it started out towards the end of my time in Argentina. And even then, I still didn't take it as seriously. I didn't really understand how big Travel Noire was, how big this whole travel writing thing was. Like, for me, it was just a way for me to creatively express myself, because I've always been someone to, like, whether it was events or whether it was music or something like that, I had to do something creative to pass the time. Like, it completes me in a way. So basically, like, after a year of just submitting like 1 or 2 articles a month to the site, we end up moving back to the States, to Georgia, and, we get the whole house and we do the thing. And I still need work to do, but I found myself getting back into events. And the events game wasn't the same in Georgia as it is in New York. In New York, you can have a party at like 2 a.m. on a Wednesday and everybody's going to show up. It wasn't the same methodology here in Atlanta. So once I started figuring that out, I said to myself, you know what, this writing thing, I actually love doing it. Let me see if I can do it, full time. And, so I reached out, and at this point, the young lady was in a higher position, even higher. And she was just like, we do have a full-time position open. Do you think you can do it? And now, like, what went from writing 2-3 articles a week, then it became between 80 and 100 articles a month. You know what I'm saying? And
oh my goodness.
That's the work that I was putting out. A lot of it was aggregating. A lot of it was my own op-ed pieces about the places that I lived in or the places that I went to and ate at. And you can still find all of those stories on Travel Noire. I'm supportive of what they do there, even though I'm no longer writing for them. But I still believe that it's a great resource for anyone that's trying to, travel on their own or travel as a couple, or anything to have to do with travel for Black and brown people. I feel like that is like the best resource. And I just happen to come from the school of Travel Noire, you could say. So
right.
that was my journey into writing. And then through networking and doing a lot of press trips, I found my way into Black Enterprise. And then from when I started doing Black Enterprise, that's when I started doing a little more public speaking. So I spoke at the, why would I forget the name of that? Not the Black Travel Expo, but I'm so mad at myself. Well, I did No Madness Fest. And then I did the other one for Black travelers in Florida, and I'm so mad. And anybody listen to this, I'm sorry. But, it was a couple conferences.
We'll find it later.
Yeah, we'll figure it out later. But a couple conferences that I did, and then I found my way to DetourXP, which is another great publication for Black and brown people that want to travel. And they're under McClatchy. So those articles that I do for them, they get syndicated across multiple publications across the country. So I get to write about the Black perspective for bigger newspapers, kind of like the Miami Herald or the Observer, SAC-B, Kansas City Star. And that's where my writing career is right now at the moment.
Nice. So you asked me actually before we started, what were some of the concerns that I had traveling? And I'm curious, so once you and before she was your wife, when the two of you had taken off and started this journey of traveling, what concerns then hit you?
Well, when it comes to just traveling as a couple, right? So I'm an only child, and I was like a single man for, I'm going to say 7-8 years before I met her. So I think that was like a scary moment for me in my, like, I guess I can't remember what age I was, but I was like late 30s. And I was thinking in my mind, like, wow, I'm about to like conjoin my life with someone else in a new country where I have no friends and I know nobody. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That was the fear. It's funny. I didn't have the fear of, but I'll tell you guys why. So I didn't have the fear of like unknown or what it was like to be Black, because we actually decided to visit Thailand before we moved there. So like the December before we moved, we went to visit, and we got in touch with like these Facebook groups of the main one called Brothers and Sisters of Thailand. And there's another one called Ebony Expats, which is a friend of mine who runs it, called, her name is Tori. And those groups were there, and we were able to meet with them when we went to visit in December. So these are people that fully moved there. Their kids were going to school there. Like, they were having relationships. They were just living a full social and personal lives there, period. And with that reassurance, it made it easier for us to move to Thailand. When it came to traveling, we were kind of adventurous. She was a solo traveler before meeting me. She actually traveled more than I did. I'm more caught up now because of my career. But yeah, she was doing a lot of solo travel. And of course, she did like Paris, more of the popular locations like Germany, Costa Rica, things of that nature she was going to. So when it comes to solo, I didn't have that much fear, but I know that I know I'm a guy, and for women, it was different. I would say for her, from her perspective, it was just being a woman and maybe like certain countries where like vendors were a bit aggressive, or, maybe taking a cab from the airport, those kind of things were a little tricky. But she said she would get through it either reading about other people's stories or, using social media to kind of navigate how to get through, those topics.
Yeah, I definitely think having other resources, especially like the different communities, either through Facebook or another social media outlet where you can meet people who are going through the life and experience that you're hoping to either have yourself, or even if it's a short visit, being able to connect with people. It's always nice to know someone where you're going.
Yeah, I believe that one of my favorites and what I recommend to a lot of people are the Facebook groups. And even if you don't want to interact, most of the questions that you have already been asked, So it's a matter of getting into the group and then just searching the questions. And then if you still don't find one particular thing that pertains to you, you can always just post, ask the questions, and you'll have like 200 people ready to respond and give you advice and even recommend things that you can do. So it's very helpful for Black and brown people, in all places all over the world. So we're there. You just need to find us.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite travel story? Because I'm seeing here you've been from Thailand, Italy, Portugal, Argentina. What's a travel story that maybe was the greatest impact, or maybe one that you like to share?
Man, I think I learned a lot about patience during COVID. And I wrote about this and I didn't get the best feedback, but it was one of the more viral stories I've ever written, because of my behavior at the time. So we get to Argentina, it's my birthday, and literally the day after my birthday, the country goes on lockdown. So on March 13th of 2020, and March 14th, the president comes on the TV. He's wearing a khaki and polos, and he's just like, the people of our country, economically, we haven't been doing great, but I don't want to risk the lives of my people. So I'm just going to shut down everything. And he confined the whole population to their homes. The only people that were allowed to go outside were the delivery app people that kind of worked, the guys that rode the bikes, the Uber that they had, or the, whatever messenger services on apps. Those were the only ways that you could shop. And this was literally for about a month. He didn't let no one go outside. And what was wild was we had everything within maybe like 10 steps of me. I was living in one of the more like affluent areas in Buenos Aires. So it was more of a lot of older people that lived there. And of course, they didn't want to risk any COVID or anything like that. But I literally had a store that was kind of like a 7-Eleven right across the street from me. And I'm telling my wife, or my girl at the time, and I'm just like, I'm just going to go to the store across the street. Like, I don't see why I have to wait on these like delivery guys, and it's like one of the more ignorant moments of my life, but not the most ignorant moment, but one of the ignorant moments. So I go outside, I run across the street. I try to be as fast as I can. They still sold me the products or whatever. And then I run back into my building. And as soon as I was back in my building, I get a message on my WhatsApp from my Airbnb host. And he's like, the security guard sent me this picture of you. And he sends me a picture of me opening the door to walk out. And mind you, I'm the only like Black person in this area. And at that time I was like celebrating, I think just turned 40 at the time. So I had dyed my hair blonde, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like outrageously out there.
You stood out just a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm like, duh, I can't even deny that it was me. So I looked at the clip and I was just like, man, so they were just very strict on you going out. And if they caught you, they just basically threatened to deport me. And they were just saying, like, if we see you again, try to go outside, we're going to call the police and they're going to detain you and then you're going to be deported.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so when they got like that, I was just like, oh, okay, thanks for the warning. And we stayed inside. So we're ordering, and then maybe like a month and a half, they finally let us go outside, but it was within like a couple blocks radius, to the point where when I reached the corner, a police officer would ask me for a letter confirming where I lived and making sure that I was able to walk down the street that I was walking on, because of course, I was brown and I was someone that they'd never ever seen before,
Mm-hmm.
After a while though, I got to know everyone in my neighborhood. I was able to shop and kind of like, you start walking into the stores and they know exactly what you want because I'm just ordering the same things. And it became like kind of like this community during COVID. And I think what was really dope is and it was the same experience I had in Thailand or Italy. Like, it's just after some time, like, people actually take the time to know you, to know what you're purchasing, to know who you are, to ask you how your wife is doing. And I feel like all those intangibles are what you don't get when you're in like a huge city like a New York, a Chicago, or even kind of like Atlanta a little bit when you're in like the more city part of it all. It was kind of like that, personability that you get when you just appreciate, and you didn't realize that you need it. You didn't realize that you needed a good morning, that you needed to hear good evening, or you needed to hear, have a nice day. And when you start practicing those things every day, and it just feels better for your soul, so that's one of the things that stood out to me the most was like, and I think for a lot of people, COVID was a time like that. But I feel like to be in Buenos Aires and Argentina and go through that, it was an experience that I wouldn't forget.
Yeah. Do you feel like your definition of community changed a bit?
Oof. Yeah. I mean, who I was in New York City at the time that I met my wife is totally different than the person I became after travel. You start to learn that the things that you felt were so important to you aren't really that important anymore. When you're stripped of all the things that you thought were cool, like in New York, I would have to dress up every day, get a haircut every 4 days. So worried about image and lifestyle. And like at the late 30s, I'm still worried about what kind of shoes I'm wearing. You know what I'm saying? All that gets thrown out the window when you're living in Thailand, shopping in a street market for food, and it's 120 degrees outside, and you don't care if your clothes match at that point. You basically just make stuff to cover your private parts and to be respectful of the country, because but to like have that playing field so leveled, and you realizing like all of the things that you thought you needed, you don't need. I hate to tap into the God of it all, but it was very spiritual, very humbling, and it brought us closer to God in a way where we were just like, we're all living under the same sun. We're all just trying to eat and have a good time at the end of the day. And I think that's what we learned was most important for us,
That's awesome. Oh yeah, God is definitely welcome on this podcast, so you're good.
Okay.
So I'm curious, so you have several different places that you have traveled to. Do you think your work is what inspired you then to move around, or was it just your own curiosity about these different places?
No, I think that, all of my traveling in the places that I lived in actually came before my writing. I think now when I'm writing, I get to do more of the experiences that people pay for, or like, some of the more extravagant things that we don't get to experience because it's not marketed to us, or, we're not privy to the information. That's more of the things that I do. If we do live somewhere, let's say it'll be for like a month, we set up shop in like a Mexico or let's say when we went to Peru as well. Yeah, those came during my writing because that wasn't long ago. Sorry, I'm talking to myself here. But I think now what I'm most excited about is knowing that I can live somewhere else and write and make a living off of it. But I'm also more appreciative of the fact that I get to like speak to people like yourself or speak to, more people that are curious about travel, beyond the access of what we see on Instagram or TikTok or all these things. Like, I think when, someone gets to speak with me, I can give you what it really is and what it really feels like, as opposed to what you see or what someone just, wrote on a video and told you that, hey, these are the 3 best places. And I'm like, those aren't the 3 best places. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, those are the places that you went to, but those aren't the best places. And I think that's what the difference is. So what I recommend is, like, when you're traveling for a weekend, just understand that your experience is for a weekend. When you travel for a month, it's different because now you're actually living in the place and you're budgeting yourself. What you do for a weekend, you can live a little extravagantly. So it's 2 different types of travel. Not that one is better than the other, but it's just that when me and my wife travel, we go for like a month or 2. You know what I'm saying? And when it comes to the weekend excursions and some of the work trips that I get to experience, I know that I'm being given an experience as opposed to living my own experience. Yeah.
I like that you highlighted the budget difference, especially when it comes to a quick weekend trip versus, immersing yourself for an entire month. That's a completely different level of expectation, budget, and experience that you can have.
Yeah, and at first I was a bit of a travel snob when I came back to the States, because I was just like, Cancun, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, done that, sent the postcard, But as I started writing more and meeting the demographic, the people that I speak to that do travel and that can only travel on the weekends, I started to understand more why those things are just as important, for the soul. Because just like me back in 2017 or 2018, when I was busting it out for like 80 hours a week, or, I'm also a single dad at that time. And, all the hustle and bustle, like if someone said to me that, here, you should get away for 4 days or 3 days, and I'll give you all the things that you need for like $1,000 or $2,000, I would have happily paid for that trip.
Right.
But now my needs are a little bit different. I love culture. I love making a friend in another country. I love going out to dinner with the people from that country and just getting to know them and understanding, like, hey, how was it growing up? Because in 1990, whatever, we had Rodney King going on. What were you guys doing during this period of time? So those kind of conversations are pretty great, because it's like, wow, we really live in different universes in a way. You know how Marvel has all these universes going on. But but it's really is that. Like, you're in another country and, George Floyd was happening while me and my wife were in Argentina, not really getting the same feeling of the people because we weren't there. You know what I'm saying? So watching it on YouTube, we're understanding it, but I wasn't getting the same vibe as like when my son would call me from Harlem and he would be like, yo, man, I'm standing out the window and like they're all, the ambulances are pulling up because they're picking up bodies, you know what I'm saying, from, buildings and hospitals and all those things. Like, we didn't get to see all of that. By the time New York was experiencing what it experienced 2 weeks in of the lockdown, Argentina was only at maybe 0.01% of, any kind of death thing because of COVID. You know what I'm saying? So it's totally different. You know what I'm saying? And that opens your mind as well. It's just like, yo, like, what you experience is not what the other person experiences. And when you let's say you go to Eastern Europe and you're like, yeah, these are all white people, but they're not the same white people as the white people that are here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're happy to see you. They're happy to, learn more about you. And I think I'm just leaning to more of like, it's important for us to travel because now we get to control the narrative as opposed to what media feeds the rest of the world. You know what I'm saying? So if media is telling the world that we are athletes or, actors or musicians, and I go to another country and I tell them that I'm a writer and my wife is a director, creative director, art director, and, we all have different perspectives. There's people that are teachers and, we do more than the three things they tell us to do.
Right.
And when they get to meet us and learn that, that's just as important. It's just as important as us traveling as it's important as it for those countries to meet us. It's symbiotic and it's very important. And it helps when it comes to perspective and making the world a safer place for Black and brown people to travel.
Do you feel or do you find yourself becoming an ambassador of Black culture, or are you just trying to share who you are with others? So is it more of an individual kind of introduction, or do you feel that pressure of, I don't want you to see Black people as the way that you may have been seeing them in the media?
You know what? Honestly, Grace, no one's asked me this question, and I don't even feel like I was prepared to answer it. But, so you stumped me on this one. It's a really good question. And I just want to say that I've never, after I wrote the article about what I did in Argentina and the feedback that I got, which was, a lot of people and a lot of Black women came from my ASS saying that, man, that is so ignorant. How can you go there and not respect the rules and all of that? And I was like, yeah, man, that was real. When I sat with myself, I said, yeah, that was real American. That was real, like, pompous and cocky. And even after learning everything that I learned in Thailand, I think I needed to do a perspective switch. And, I definitely learned from that. And now when I move and I go into other places, I am very conscious of the lack of Black and brown people they see.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, for our honeymoon, we love Peruvian food. We're big foodies. We said we're going to go to Peru for our honeymoon. Now, not to say that there isn't Black people, but, we didn't just do Lima. We went to a whole nother side of Peru, more coastal because I'm a big fan of the beach. And it's a secluded area where they don't get to see too many Black Americans or, Hispanic Americans, because I'm second generation Dominican Republic. We go there, and the fact that they don't get to experience so many of us or get to see us, they're just so happy to see us. And now I know that it's important for me to be responsible. I know it's important for also to be myself, but to be respectful, to, ask questions, what I'm saying, to have a conversation with people, just make sure that we're treating people the way they deserve to be treated and the way they deserve to be treated under God. You know what I'm saying? We're all equal. So I do believe that. And as far as like coining myself as an ambassador, I haven't gotten there yet. Would some people say that I am? I never thought of it that way until you said it. And it's given me something to think of.
No pressure.
Moving forward. You know what I'm saying? But it does kind of like, and to switch a little bit, I know that I get to experience like a lot of these like luxury hotels or luxury experiences or cruises and stuff that a lot of us don't get to go on or won't be able to go on until we're like 60 something or whatever because of the whole disposable income and things of that nature, whatever circumstance. I get to go there and they're very curious about what it is that I like. And they're very curious about how I feel about certain experiences. And when I do go to those places, I do think of us. I do think of that, that young lady that is, let's say, middle class. She sees this experience maybe on my account on Instagram or any other, or TikTok, or my wife's account as well, and sees it. And she's like, oh, I would love to do that one day. You know what I'm saying? And let's say she has 2 kids and, she's a single mom, but she's still a professional. She's a career woman, maybe just hitting $100,000, living in a second city like a Milwaukee or something like that. So she can afford everything, but this excursion is like $10,000, you know what I'm saying? And she's like, yo, I want to take my 10,000 and I want to go on that trip that Rafael and Cherie went on with one of these companies. And I want to see what it is to cruise along the coast of the South of France. You know what I'm saying? So I take into consideration that person, that specific person. And I say to myself, if she was on this trip, is she being catered to? You know, was there a thought as to like, is this something that this person would like to try or would like to eat? Is this the way they would like to be spoken to? Is this something that they can, would this be something that they would enjoy? And I think about all those things within all the experiences that I get offered as a travel writer. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, in that sense, do I see myself as an ambassador? Yeah, I take into consideration my people when I write. So I write for my people. I write for, you know, I'm originally from the Bronx. I grew up in the projects. And when I was little, I would watch the CW and I would see white families with 2-parent homes and enjoying little like suburban lifestyles. And I would be like, wow, I wonder what that's like. And now that I'm an adult and I get to visit a Chattanooga or I get to go to a Milwaukee, when I write about it, I write it from that perspective of that kid that grew up in 6B and high-bridge houses, you know what I'm saying? And was like, yo, I want to do that one day. And these are the cool things that you can see when you come here. There is Black people here. It's not what it was 20 years ago when they were showing all these shows on TV and they had like one Black neighbor on a sitcom. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, right. We're here. Like, we're very relevant. We got food going on. We got businesses outside of just soul food restaurants as well, which is something that I also try to push. Unfortunately, you know, well, not unfortunately, but fortunately, it is a lot of food things going on, but there's also a lot of Black-owned businesses that don't have anything to do with food. So all of these things I get to write about, and I make sure that I write about it from that perspective of someone who just didn't have those circumstances growing up to be able to see the world globally and domestically.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your work, Rafael, especially with the perspective that you bring to your writing and being aware of the people that would benefit from it, or at least to be thought of, because that's another piece that's missing is a lot of times in the travel industry, unless you actually have a voice or a representative, you're not included in the planning, any part of it that makes the experience. And so your role and the way that you write and what you're incorporating is helpful for those people who don't think that they could experience that. And you're giving them a window into what they actually can. So yeah, we definitely appreciate what you do.
Yeah, and I appreciate platforms like this. And, you know, I don't want to be as long-winded as before, but I just wanted to say that, like, I feel like it's very important that when Black and brown women travel and they do have an issue with something, you know, you guys matter. Have an understanding that you matter and use your voice and complain. Because just like Becky or Susan would have an issue with something, your dollar equals the same as theirs. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And now that Black and brown women have stepped it up to a point where financially, you know, you're dictating culture. You know what I'm saying? You're dictating what American companies are fabricating for us to consume. Just understand that your voice is even more important right now when it comes to being a consumer. So, you know, when something doesn't feel right, I encourage all Black and brown people to just speak up and say, hey, I feel like I've been treated this way. Is there something that you can do about this? And that go a long way when it comes to the treatment of our children and our children's children. That a complaint goes a very long way. And I just want to encourage our people to do more of that.
Yeah, use your voice. All right. So before we go, I'd love to hear where you're going next and what's next for you.
So where I'm going next. So just a real quick plug for a friend who's a Black woman, and shout out to Jazz. There's this excursion called the Soulful Epicurean Experience. I did it this year, and it's with AMA Waterways, and I encourage all of your listeners to go check it out. It's an experience catered to Black people on a cruise that was only meant for white folks. So that's one thing out there. But my next trip, actually, I'll be headed to Buffalo to check out some of the, what that city has to offer. And that's more of a press trip. But then after that, I'll be headed to the Mediterranean on another, I guess, media trip excursion with Viking Cruises. And they're doing something where the first port is in Venice, then Croatia, then Greece. So I'll be there for the month of October. And I hope people can check in and see what I write about it in a couple of months. But I'm looking forward to that experience. And I'm able to bring my wife, so that also helps.
Yeah, nice.
It makes it real fun. And, she's definitely the luckiest plus one in the world. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing. And I just want everyone out there, feel free to follow me on Instagram. Also, I do consultations, and you can find all that information on my Instagram. There's a Linktree link on there. And if anybody wants to talk either about travel writing or moving abroad or anything under the travel sun, or if you are someone in media and you just want to brand yourself somehow or see how you can do something else and pivot, I'm also here to help as well. So that's my take for now.
What's your website or your IG?
Yeah, my IG is I am Rafael Peña, and it's I am RafaelPena. And basically all my socials would have that same exact name, Twitter, and I'm very big on LinkedIn. Actually, I love, the seriousness of LinkedIn. So I'm more than likely to answer a message on LinkedIn than I am on DM. And as far as my consultations are concerned, if you just click a link, it has a booking info there, and you can do all that through Instagram as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being a guest. I'm so glad we were introduced and that I had this opportunity to talk to you today.
Grace, thank you for having me. Thank you for your patience. And you have one of the most dopest podcast voices ever. I don't really like my voice, so I don't have a podcast, but maybe, I don't know, maybe one day I'll try it. Thank you so much for having me and opening up your platform to the things that I do and all the stuff that I love to do for God at this point. You know what I'm saying? So all praise to him, and shout out to everyone that's on the same team.
Hey there, Grace here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some useful takeaways. Thank you so much for listening and staying until the end. Don't forget to rate the show or share it with some friends. Have a wonderful week. Take care. And remember, be bold, be curious, be ready to tell your story. You never know who needs it. Bye-bye.